a surprise, I find, that we're in the thick of a retreat and suddenly we're coming to the end of it. But there you are. That's how things are. And I'll pass over to Dhammarati to let you know what we're going to be doing this morning.
So what we're going to be doing, if I can remember Badra's email sufficiently clearly, the Buddha finishes the Satipatthana Sutta with an exhortation to the bhikkhus, and I thought in my own rather lower level I might do the same. Then let's do a sort of last little leg through exploration of the practice, to sort of get a sense of the shape of it again. And then around 11, hand back over to Badra, and we'll go into groups, I think. Badra can explain what happens later after the meditation. So do you want to say anything now, Badra, or shall I just do
well, maybe I will, just so people aren't left on tenterhooks wondering what on earth is going to be happening. So yes, so I just say, so at 11 o'clock, the idea is to just grab a cup of tea or a beverage of some sort, and then there's an opportunity just to go into groups to just, well, I thought the way I framed it was something about just celebrating any aspect of the retreat that has either enlivened us or released us during the last few days. So it's just really a chance to share that with each other. And then at midday, we'll come back for a very brief plenary. Just if anybody wants to voice something to the anything of what was discussed in the small groups back in the larger group, just for 15 minutes. And then I'll just be ending with a few words of appreciation. And Dhammarati will end the retreat with the transference of merit. That's the plan for the morning, and we'll be finishing at 12:30. So that's the shape of the morning. So that means we can just relax into the morning together and pass back to the final exhortation from Dhammarati.
Yeah, so the very last bit of the text, it's quite a strange bit, actually. But the Buddha finishes off saying, if anyone should develop these 4 satipatthanas in such a way for 7 years, one of 2 fruits could be expected, either final knowledge here and now, or if there's a trace of clinging left, non-returning. So this is the Buddha, I guess, just saying to the bhikkhus what Badra just said to us. He's asking us to notice anything that enlivened or liberated them during it. And I guess they were about to go into a plenary session at the end of the teaching. But anyway, so the Buddha just bringing in this thing that if you practice it for 7 years, you can expect one of 2 fruits. Then there's really lovely and slightly mysterious little sequence. The Buddha says, let alone 7 years, 6 years, 5 years, 4 years, 3 years, 2 years, a year. And then it's 7 months. And then it's let alone, counts it down, let alone half a month. If anyone should develop these 4 foundations of mindfulness in such a way for 7 days, one of 2 fruits can be expected. So that's the Pali text. One of the Chinese texts goes even further and says if you practice it seriously in the morning, you should be showing some results by the evening. Right, so I don't know how your last 7 days has been. Don't know how many fruits you noticed in the evening, having practiced in the morning. What an interesting little passage. I can't really think of an equivalent. I don't know my Pali Canon inside out, but again, this emphasis, I guess, on what an effective path this is. And I wanted just to pick up a couple of points that Bhante makes in the seminar and sort of transcribed into the Living with Awareness book. And the first point he makes is that what he says is the important message is that you don't have to spend years working away at developing mindfulness to get anywhere. Been studying in another context, a text called the Chetokila Sutta, and just bringing to mind one of the traditional descriptions of the Dharma as sanditiko. And sanditiko means that it's immediately apparent. And I suppose sort of one of the points I wanted to make, I hope for some people this has happened, but you know, that this idea that you take awareness into the breath and the body, and you can feel the body relax. You can take awareness into the relaxation of the body, and it's got a pleasurable feeling tone. So that there's something almost literally immediate to that quality of attention. And in that immediate experience, you're looking at the first glimmer of the first two steps of the awakening factors. You're looking at awareness starting to go into experience, and you're looking at the release that happens as a consequence. So just that idea that the Dhamma is immediately apparent. I mean, to bring it to its full fruition traditionally can take a wee while, like aeons, but there's an engagement with it, an engagement with the fruits of it that is sanditiko. And I think there's something sort of significant in that. I think we quite often miss spiritual experience, in inverted commas, that we're having. I liked the way Badra framed the checkout groups and this idea of noticing what sort of enlivened us or released us. And one of the lessons for me of doing this sutta is I was so busy waiting for the lightning from the sky that I was missing all these little bubblings up of moments of awareness, moments of release. And one of the real lessons from practice is, first of all, a wee bit less self-criticism and a little bit more of just appreciative awareness to what's already emerging. But I noticed that particularly with the PT and the sukha, you know, just realizing there's little kind of moments of pleasure right almost from the sort of get-go, but because I had an idea of what PT was like, I was missing very simple little releasings and liberations of energy. A little line from Bante's Veil of Stars, I think, is you don't get to the stars by treading on the flowers. So it's just starting to notice very ordinary little moments of experience that are there. So this first point, that you don't have to spend years working to be getting anywhere. The path has an immediate fruit to it. And back to the Chetokila study that I'm doing elsewhere, one of the points that's made in the Chetokila Sutta is that if you have confidence in the framework of practice, that confidence lets you engage more fully and lets you engage with practice in a way that becomes transformative. And the confidence isn't based on the Buddha persuading us. It's based on us seeing directly that it does what it says it's going to do. You take awareness into experience, your experience starts to change. So that's the first point, I think, coming out of this. Second point coming out of the Buddha's little exhortation about this final knowledge here and now, or if there's a trace of clinging left, non-return. It's again, one of the things I find beautiful about this practice is that it starts so simply and it ends up so profound. And the profound result grows out of the simple roots. So we're setting in motion a process that's immediately accessible, but a process that actually you can see how it gradually supports a deeper and deeper release of awareness, deeper and deeper release of the habits that catch us, And out of that process comes a decisive liberation. But that flavour of liberation is there from the moment the body starts to relax. You're looking at a process of awareness and release that just goes deeper and deeper. So this idea that the practice goes deep, and even you can get a bit, was it somebody just, Bhante I think describes it as a foretaste. You get a foretaste of where the practice is, that the quality of awareness, the quality of liberation that the practice supports. But another line from the seminar is that characteristically, very little is said about the goal in this sutta. So it gets 2 lines. It gets either final knowledge here and now, or if there's a trace of self-clinging, once returning. And the goal gets 2 lines. Practice gets the Pali equivalent of 15 A4 pages. So the sutta is describing what you do with your awareness, where you take it, how you support it, and then just enough to give you an idea, you know, something a wee bit resonant and evocative about where we're trying to head. The attention's on the conditions that support that deepening awareness. Bhante's comment on this is that we don't have to analyze our progress all the time. We don't have to worry too much about where exactly we're at. The crucial thing is that there's a sense of momentum. There's a sense that the awareness is starting to unfold. So quoting Bhante again, you feel intuitively that you're becoming spiritually more alive, and that you see these little knots of habit and attachment breaking up. So again, there's a sense of a sort of shift in the momentum of our experience, just sort of starting to become more alive to, more sensitive to that momentum of the path that we're setting up. And the third point that comes out of this, third point that Bhante makes, I think, is that this unfolding process isn't random. We're back to this idea of Dhammarati. We're looking at part of the nature of things. And that as you take awareness into experience, you start to build that momentum of awakening. That's what's being described in the awakening factors. So last little thing, just coming back to the line that we started with, that our engagement with our breath, with our body, with our feelings, with our states of mind is ardent, clearly knowing, mindful, and free from desires and discontents. And I just wanted to recap, just to say something about each of those. So this idea about ardent, I was reading a book I really enjoyed by a guy called Robert Wright, called Why Buddhism is True. It's always nice to reassure myself that Buddhism is true. But he's I think, a neuroscientist, Robert Wright. And personally, I don't think the Dhamma needs neuroscience to back it up. But he's got some lovely little angles. And he's talking about how feelings give rise to these more or less autonomous patterns of reaction. And in traditional Buddhism, these patterns are called the anusayas. They're the very strong, hardwired habits of how we respond to experience. And usually it's habits that of craving, habits of aversion, and so on. And lovely evocative little phrase from Wright. He says, when you're distracted in meditation, it's not so much that your mind wanders, it's more that it's been hijacked by intruders. And a lot of our experience is of the mind being hijacked by intruders. It's this deep habitual awareness, or sort of deep habitual patterns of behavior that no matter what we intend, the mind gets hijacked by intruders that we've been hardwired to respond from. And the crucial point about this, I think, is that those habits can be shifted, but it means the amount of energy going into shifting the habits has to be strong enough for the influence of the intention to be stronger than the influence of the habits. So this idea of ardent is that practice will be transformative, but it will be transformative to the extent that there's enough energy behind it for that shift to actually happen and for the habits not to keep re-establishing themselves. So you've got this little window of what it's like for awareness to move into the experience, for that freer space to open up. And the request of practice is that the momentum of our mind starts to move in that direction. So that's the ardent. And then the sati sampajanya, the mindful and clearly knowing. So the mindful is just this starting to wake up to what experience is like. I mean, again, for me, I'm a bit of a hedonist. And this idea in the Dhammapada that not being mindful is like being dead. Like one of the immediate spiritual fruits for me is that just starting to be alive to what's going on in my body, starting to be alive to what's going on in my feelings, starting to be alive to what's going on in my mind. It's such a richer relationship to experience. So just on its own terms, there's something in that thing about sati. But the crucial thing about sati is that you're starting to move to this moment of choice. That, what was it Bhante says somewhere, that it's awareness of feelings and our reactions to them that makes spiritual practice possible. So it's just starting to be alive enough to emerging experience. And then the sampajanya, just to be clear about the intention of being available to that without being caught in it. So the intention itself has a value. So it's not that our experience is going to immediately transform, but in the same way that you don't immediately feel universal goodwill, crucial thing about metta practice is that we're setting up an intention to respond out of kindness. Crucial thing in sampajanya is that we're just starting to make a consistent intention to respond out of awareness and kindness. And that intention itself, just staying connected to that direction in our own experience, I think is almost the central practice that comes out of this. In a way that the next line sort of unpacks that. We're free from desire and discontent. So desire and discontent is just our habitual way of responding to experience. And it's almost like the main implication, I think, of mindfulness practice, of satipatthana practice, of anapanasati practice, is in the sitting practice, you get a sense of what that freer awareness is like. And then the intention is just to, in our ongoing experience, starting to be alive to when we respond to experience in a way that reinforces self-clinging or self-reference. And we start to be aware of when we respond in a way that releases it. So when we're talking to somebody, when we're walking, sitting, lying down, whatever we're doing, just starting to get a feel of whether the mind's moving towards that tight, self-centered response, or whether it's moving into something open, alive, responsive, connected. And again, it's just a matter of getting energy behind that momentum of awakening, of liberating. And it starts very, very simply. You're getting this step-by-step instruction about how we engage with that, how we engage with our own experience, how we engage with others, how we put energy behind it. So coming back to this idea of a direct path, what I hope we've got at the end of the week is a bit of a sense of where we can take attention that supports that momentum towards deeper, freer awareness. It happens in a mandala of practice. I'm sure people aren't misconstruing the direct path idea like this, but it's not promoting mindfulness above any other practice. It's saying you've got a description here of what that process of liberation looks like. A very practical way of engaging with it. It happens in a whole mandala of practice. So in Satipatthana practice, that self and other, the positive emotion thing, I think is left quite implicit. And the whole framework of metta, the Brahma Viharas, they take that positive emotion strand and they unpack it more fully. One of the practices that we do in the order, the 6 element practice, looks more deeply at that whole habit of self-clinging and how we release ourselves from it. Devotional practice is a different way of becoming receptively aware of that non-willed deeper current in our practice, and in a way a kind of more embodied description of human experience, a less analytical way of approaching it. And the whole thing happens in a context of ethics, happens in a context of relationship, like our communication with each other, the way I learn from your deepening practice, the way you reflect me back at myself, is an absolutely crucial aspect of what that unfolding awareness looks like, the sort of relational nature of growing awareness. So this idea of a direct path, it's an emphasis within a mandala of practice, all of which support, with their own different emphases, the same unfolding momentum towards liberation. But at the end of it, what you've got is something being described that gets us to the absolutely crucial steps of how we take awareness into experience and how we bring a moment of choice into that gap between having the experience and responding to it habitually. We're taking awareness in a way that creates that moment of freedom. It goes deep, but whether we are letting go, as the Buddha says, of the last trace of self-clinging, or whether we're just learning how to finally make connection with the breath and manage to stay with it for a whole in-breath and a whole out-breath. It's the same momentum. It's the mind starting to engage with a momentum towards awakening at a level that's appropriate for us. You don't need to end game it. You just need to be aware of what's unfolding, aware of the momentum of it, aware of how we respond to it in a way that supports that process of awakening. And the Satipatthana Sutta and the Anapanasati Sutta just give you this beautifully precise description of where it is the awareness needs to go and what it is we need to attend to with enough energy to get that unfolding momentum starting to happen. So I hope in the last 7 days you get a little bit of a sense of that, what that process looks like, and do it in a way that works for you. You know, again, you've got the Buddha talking to the guy about the mindfulness of breathing and saying, yeah, you could do it like that. So how do you make this something that's kind of experientially helpful, something that's experientially alive for you, but something that takes these key moments of the teaching that we're being pointed to and sort of gives us access to them in a way that works for us. So there's got to be that kind of dialogue between the teaching and our own emerging, unfolding experience. And the sutta just gives you a description of the framework of how that dialogue can happen. So shall we do one last little led through sitting practice? I'll just give us the main hinges of it for nostalgia's sake. I won't say very much about the practice. Into our own equivalent of the forest, just withdrawing from the habitual pulls on our attention. Body beneath that metaphorical tree, sense of the body rooted, grounded. Setting up that foundation so we're knowing with our whole body. The awareness is an embodied awareness. Sense of the body naturally aligned. Bringing mindfulness to the fore. Having a sense of what mindfulness in our experience is like. Breathing in a long breath. I know I'm breathing in a long breath. Breathing out a long breath. I know I'm breathing out a long breath. Breathing in a short breath. I know I'm breathing in a short breath. Breathing out a short breath. I know I'm breathing out a short breath. Sensitive to the whole body. I breathe in, I breathe out. calming the whole body. Sensitive to piti. I breathe in, I breathe out. Sensitive to sukha. Breathe in, I breathe out. sensitive to mental processes. And calming mental processes. I breathe in. I breathe out. Knowing the mind. I breathe in. I breathe out. Steadying the mind. Gladdening the mind. liberating the mind. Focusing on impermanence. I breathe in, I breathe out. Letting go of clinging. Breathe in, I breathe out. And bringing our awareness to the end of each breath. Aware of that moment of stillness that follows the breath, the end of the out breath. Focusing on fading away. I breathe in, I breathe out. And aware of the breath, aware of the air around us coming into our body as breath. And on the out breath, aware of it returning to the air around us. Sense of the world becoming self. Self becoming the world. No tight boundary between them. Focusing on letting go. Focusing on giving back. I breathe in, I breathe out. And that softening of self-clinging. This means a natural opening up to other. And their awareness to naturally include the others on this call. in our community that we practice with, that we're supported by. Bringing to mind the people that we know well. People that we don't know so well. Each person part of the conditions that support our own deepening awareness. And that boundary between ourselves and others be just softening a little. So we'll finish the practice there. One little quote from Bhante that I forgot to mention is he says that mindfulness, bringing mindfulness to our experience, accelerates that natural process of growth. I hope people get a little bit of a sense of that just as we take awareness in. That flow of experience intensifies. So just staying connected to that. I believe the next thing on the program is some tea.